People can continue to grow and change their opinions no matter how old they are. In just a short 4 years, she changed her entire stance on voting, and I had no idea because I never asked. I also learned that it's important to have hard conversations with the people in my life that I love.
But I don't understand that.
I vote because I'm eligible to and privileged to be able to do so. There are so many people in this country who are affected by politics but don't have a voice in them. So I vote for the people who can't.
I vote because I want our people and our planet to survive long enough so that someday, hopefully, we don't have to vote for the lesser of two evils.
To make sure that everyone has equal opportunity in this country and no one's rights are being taken away because of where they come from, who they identify as, and what their beliefs are.
I vote because I recognize that it is a privilege to vote, and that I want to use my vote to be able to advocate for the voices that may not be able to have the equal chance of being heard.
I vote because it's a right and a responsibility, and because I want to leave the world better than when I entered it.
I vote for those who can't.
Standing side by the mountain, and it was super scary. I felt that intimidated. I ended up calling my mom. Understand he's supposed to be patrolling, keeping an eye out, but he's literally standing there watching over me. So they're like, "Oh, we actually got rid." What I learned from Grace's interview, that was like weird. So
After
like,
interviewing my mom, I learned that people can continue to grow.
After interviewing my mom, I realized we had more in common than I originally thought. We were both disillusioned about voting at a young age due to our first voting experiences, but seeing the way that she's continued on and continues to stay involved and be passionate about making the world a better place inspires me.
I turned 18 on September 11th, 1976, and I was immensely proud and excited to get a chance to vote. 2 months later, I voted for Jimmy Carter, and I was ecstatic when he won. I remember thinking, oh, well, this proves somehow that my vote matters. It was my first big win. I thought, oh, well, yeah, voting works. I began to think differently later on. So anyway, in 76, I voted for Carter, and I watched through his presidency. And for anyone coming up in the 70s at that time, the 3 years previous to that election was Nixon getting impeached. So there was a real cloud over the presidency already. There was a real sense of distrust in the whole process. But I was still coming up in a family that, well, there was a big press to vote. I mean, voting was considered like your moral duty. So there was that sense of duty and of already being involved. I think because my parents modeled it, it was like in my blood. And it shocked me to find out when I met your father that he didn't vote. He missed all sorts of elections. Oh, I don't believe in that stuff. To me, that was like a moral sin, because that's how it was drummed into me. I never missed an election, even if I thought it was a hopeless cause. So anyway, in 76, it was Carter. I voted, and, well, I considered myself an adult by then, and even though I did have a lot of other things going on in my life, I did pay attention to politics and what was going on, and was extremely disillusioned with manipulations at the end of Carter's presidency. There was a kidnapping of Americans in Iran. I don't remember. Anyways, he lost the presidency because of militaristic action. He wouldn't act like a hawk, he acted like a dove, and it lost him the presidency. I was just extremely disillusioned. So let's see, so that was Carter. In 80, we got Reagan. I could hardly believe that a boob like Ronald Reagan could get elected. I thought that was about the worst idea in the world, about tantamount to hiring a reality star for the hardest job on the planet. Actually, I think somewhere in that election year we wrote this song. Michelle wrote the words and I wrote the music to it, called "Don't Push the Button, Ronnie." I'm sure you'll find it somewhere on a cassette player or vinyl 45 when you clean out after I die. Anyways, that was 8 years of Reagan and trickle-down economics that did not seem to work for us. Bush came in after Reagan. So it was 4 years of Bush, and that was agony. And we got involved in Iran, and everything just seemed to turn to shit. And well, I would have to say that at a certain point, voting felt more like a burden than either a right or a responsibility. Because it was a responsibility, it just felt more and more burdensome the more propositions got put on the ballot. And I felt more like I was really out of my comfort zone, and I was just relying on other people's opinions. And I have to say that even though I voted in every election, there have been times where I haven't voted on every single issue. And especially with the shit that came down in the 2016 election, I realized, it all matters. It's not just the presidential election that matters. Everybody gets their knickers in a twist over it, but it's everything. I mean, you could have a president who represents your beliefs, but if either of the houses don't represent your beliefs, then you're screwed. But there is a positive reason for me voting for Biden, and it's that with everything that's happened in the last 4 years, and if I'm being honest, the last 4 months, our country is so broken. I mean, we're so battered. It's kind of like the way it was in '68 or in the early '60s when, we lost JFK and then we lost Robert Kennedy and we lost Martin Luther King Jr. and Medgar Evers. And I mean, there is just so much going on that I feel like we really need a clear example of listening to both sides. Because that's what I think our real issue is. Everyone's yelling at each other so loud that nobody is listening to anybody. So I'd say, in general, I went into it all pretty gung-ho, thinking I was going to make a difference, and 40 years later, I don't feel nearly so powerful. But then again, I guess you could take that and apply it to a lot of different things. There's a lot of things I feel a lot less powerful and less confident about. But I guess I voted for Biden partly because I think if there was ever a time that we needed someone who can, let both sides know that their opinions are valued, it's now.
What I learned from this interview was that this person who raised me very much influenced my own ideas and my own morals and my own political beliefs, but they also have some different beliefs based on their own experiences, and that's how we get politicized, is by what we experience.
I voted for George McGovern in 1972 in the national election against Richard Nixon. And at that time, everybody was getting somewhat politicized. I had this job at the Port Authority where I had to go buy all the newspapers and cut out all the stories about the Massachusetts Port Authority. And I got educated that way by, reading 4 newspapers a day, learning about Vietnam, civil rights, feminism. And so I was kind of politicized that way too. Well, now, I was not politicized into being an activist per se, but I was politicized just into being a discerning voter. When I was in college, we were all sort of activists by default. When we went on strike after the Kent State shooting, they canceled all the classes and they kept the campus open so you could still go and have conversations with students and faculty. The school set it up. The directive was for everybody to talk to each other and learn so that everybody learns from each other. And the conversation should be about the war, about the government killing college students, not to mention putting soldiers in harm's way. So everybody was talking about this stuff. But I mean, even then, I've always voted Democratic. When the Democrat won, I was happy, and when the Democrat lost, I was sad, but I didn't regret voting for the candidate. I would have cried if Hillary won just because she was the first woman. When Obama won, I cried. I cried when Clinton, I don't know if I cried when he won, but I cried when he left because he was my president. And he was like almost my age, coming after a lot of Republicans. What I will say is I take voting very seriously. And I try to do my homework. What's harder is when it's like a nonpartisan race, like the county court justices, and they don't run campaigns and you don't know much about them. But when there is a race, I try to learn about people, you know, if for Congress or president or a local race, like for mayor, city council. And when I don't, I kind of just default vote Democratic. But overall, I feel very good. I feel very strongly that Joe Biden clearly won. But I am disgusted but not surprised that Trump is fighting it because he has signaled from the very beginning that he does not want to leave the White House ever. But the country is so polarized, you know. There's a lot of people voted for Trump and they're still out there. So it's not going to be easy to change the country or change the way the dialogue takes place right now, which is ideally what's hoped for. But the possibility of reaching across the aisle is what Biden wants, whether he can do it effectively or not. I don't know if the Republicans are open to that at all. And the Trump voters, will they be amenable to the things that he wants to do? The policies that he'll put through, will they accept those, understand those, be comfortable with those, even be sympathetic to some of those? If that can happen, then we can get back. We'll be on the right course.
After interviewing my mom, I learned that people can continue to grow and change their opinions no matter how old they are. In just a short 4 years, she changed her entire stance on voting, and I had no idea because I never asked. I also learned that it's important to have hard conversations with people in my life that I love.
Like sex, I learned about voting from my friends. I definitely knew very little about voting and about the process. Being a first-generation American with, I am disappointed to say, a mother who chose not to vote, even though she went through the process of becoming an American citizen. She was not interested in politics. My dad was interested in politics and very well read and well versed, but never talked to me about politics or voting so much. I think like with a lot of things, when you're a kid and your parents have a certain set of beliefs, you don't really get exposed to other beliefs or other perspectives. I grew up in a conservative household. I mean, a household that was religious and an immigrant family. But as a non-person of color, I guess those attributes lend themselves to more conservative politics. So when I voted for the first time, I only had that perspective that matched my parents. But as I've gotten older and I'm actually an adult now with real world and real life experiences, I try to make better decisions and better choices and look at things from different perspectives. Well, admittedly, I don't do a very good job of staying informed. In 2016, I did not vote in the presidential elections. I intentionally missed an election at a time when I thought I could not put my vote behind either candidate. I think now this is the most important election for me ever, because I've never felt this strong of a desire to get my candidate into office. So this year I voted, absolutely. From, I think it's a moral standpoint. I can't, it's just too many things. And I just don't want him to be in office anymore, regardless of whether or not it aligns with other of my political or social beliefs. I think he's a bad person. But I voted for Biden because, above all else, I'm not supposed to get emotional in this, but because I think that Donald Trump sows hate. So, with that being said, I was very pleased when I realized that Biden was winning. That was my first reaction. And I mean, my second reaction was like, oh, great, here we go. What's Donald Trump going to do? And I think in all of that, we lost sight of how gracefully Joe Biden handled everything. I mean, I feel like I didn't hear anyone say anything about how Joe Biden was handling the results and, what Trump and his team were doing. I mean, this makes me a little bit worried that there's still going to be a lot of divisiveness in politics. I think and I hope that with Joe Biden as a leader, that people hopefully lean toward not being so divisive and want to try to reach a common goal and ultimately a more tolerant and more loving culture.
That's the thing, like, people, it's saying, I've heard this exact saying in two separate fucking plays of like, if if you're not a bleeding heart when you're young, you have no heart. And then if you're not, no, if you're not, if you're not a Democrat when you're young, you have no heart. If you're not a Republican when you're older, you have no brain. And it's like, fuck you, first of all, you fucking weird fucking playwright. Anyways, so like, what's with this like thing of like the young generations are going to be the ones who are radical and they're going to grow out of it. Why is radical life seen as a fucking like a stage, like being a scene kid is? Like what? Like no, like this needs to be carried through to like your deathbed, homie. Like you got to be in this, and that's the thing. Like I've seen like a chart where it's about accumulated wealth of the different generations. Boomers have like this crazy amount, and then below them, like the expectancy for Gen X, it's way less, and then half of that's millennials, way less. Then Gen Z, our estimated accumulated wealth is like so small compared to that of boomers. And boomers are the ones, and before them too, are the ones who have power, who have the money, who have the resources, who have the connections, who have the government positions, and they're doing nothing. And that's the thing about putting the onus of really radical thought on young people. Older people need to stop being like, well, they're from an older generation. They're thinking like, no, stop. Like there has to be some kind of united effort of older people to really sit with younger people and let them talk. You know what I mean? I don't feel like that happens at all. I feel like they dismiss us. They call us too young, too impassioned, too naive. When like there has to be some real effort of older people to listen to us. There has to be some kind of like some effort for empathy and unity to happen. I don't know what that is. If that can happen in theater or something, in a non-white capitalistic theater, available to everybody. Very, like I dream of a lot, and I hope for a lot to happen. I think if it's just me thinking them, they're gonna sound crazy. If it's just our generation doing it, we're gonna sound a little too impassioned. But if we have older people, if we have Gen X, if we have boomers, who also like will help us and will follow and encourage what we think, that's everybody. It's everybody thinking the same thing, which I'm not trying to be like totalitarian and fascist about it, but I'm thinking like, like just some united empathy about everyone's pain and how we can stop hurting.
Yeah, what that sort of attitude reveals to me about people is that we've kind of like given ourselves the okay to at some point to stop making choices for the benefit of others and to instead we are encouraged to vote and make choices on behalf of ourselves, to be selfish and to vote within our own self-interests. And where the flaw lies is that when the older generation starts saying, oh yeah, the younger generation is going to change everything, you're going to be so revolutionary, you're going to change the world one day, is that you're giving the younger generation responsibility without trust. You're giving them power, social power, without actual like power, which in our country is money. And like you said, Maddie, the money resides in the older generations. And so if you truly believe that the children are the future, then you support the future.
Yeah. I think like almost everybody has said, it really, when people say that the younger generation is going to save the world, and I've even heard they're going to fix the mistakes that my generation has made. I've heard this from older people. I hear a lack of accountability. Like, you've had this power, you've had financial power, and you've had time to do things, and you're saying, I couldn't get it done or I wasn't willing to, so I'm pushing it off onto you. People choose to act in their own self-interest. I really want to get a tax cut, so I don't really care about the environment. I don't really care about, leaving a planet for my kids and my grandkids. And it's just this like lack of accountability and lack of like foresight. It's just that like I want what I want right now, and I don't care about anything else. So, you know, the younger generations wouldn't be tasked with this like gargantuan responsibility of having to save the world if the people who came before us had acted better. So
without their help, the task is like Herculean. Women. But with their help, it's possible, you know?
I like that.
Yeah.
What I learned from Grace's interview is that there needs to be accountability on all sides, whether you're a voter, politician, or non-voter. To quote her, so to speak, we can't all just go back to eating brunch. Politics don't take a break.
My first experience with voting was for the 2016 election. I was in my senior year of high school when I was taking government and econ. I felt really lucky to be in a class where we were actively being educated about politics and voting and all that type of stuff. I even felt lucky with my family. We all sat around the table one night and we all voted together. We discussed different propositions and we're like, I understand this, but I don't understand that. I was really pumped at the time to be voting for who I thought was going to be the first woman president. Every news outlet was saying Hillary Clinton has like a 90% chance of winning. Like, without a doubt in my mind, I was like, she's gonna win. But obviously, polls don't predict the future. I do wish that I had done a little bit more research about local propositions, how certain things were going to affect the community. Actually, kind of a funny story. So, 7-Eleven has their free Slurpee day, right? There was a proposition that called for a soda tax, which I voted for. And because of the soda tax, you can't actually get a free Slurpee on Free Slurpee Day. It costs 30 cents. Not the biggest deal ever, but it really made me think if you vote for something, there can be completely random unintended things that can come up from it. It really made me think like, wow, did I vote for something that could be hurting me or other people? Again, the soda tax isn't the biggest thing. That's why I try to stay informed on ballot propositions and social issues such as Black Lives Matter movement. The only way I personally was seeing everything that was happening was on social media. People would post and reshare a couple news articles. They were sharing infographics about fundraisers, places to donate to, and voter guides for the upcoming election. Honestly, some of the online information scares me a bit because I know it can be so easy to accidentally read or share information. But overall, stuff online really helped to inform who I ended up voting for, Biden and Harris. I voted for Biden mostly because I think voting for him is the easiest way to get Trump out of office. However, I did feel conflicted about it because he literally supported segregation and like a bunch of wild stuff like that. Obviously he's like, oh, I've changed and stuff like that, but having Trump in office is way, way, way more dangerous. For a couple of days, it really did seem like the election might go towards Donald Trump. When I found out about the results, I was upstairs in my room and suddenly I heard cheering from downstairs. I ran downstairs and my mom was crying and hugging everyone in the family. Then we ran outside, we put our mask on for like a minute and we're like, yay! And then there were a couple of people across the street who were also like, yay! Finally, we had the relief of knowing we weren't going to get another 4 years of Donald Trump in the White House. Now that it's been like a month, has it been a month? I don't know. Every single day feels like a month, but it's definitely been disheartening to see how much people are still holding on to the idea that Trump will still be the president. All of that hope that I felt before, I feel like it's a little bit damped by people saying they won't accept the results. I think at some point, people who think that he's still going to be the president in 2021 will just have to get in touch with reality. And I think that the people who are his followers at some point, they're going to have to accept that the election wasn't stolen. Now that that orange Cheeto is out of the office, I think there'll be a fair amount of people who feel like they don't need to care about politics anymore. I think Mark Hamill, like the guy who plays Luke Skywalker, tweeted something saying, "I'm so excited to not have to care about politics anymore." And a lot of people were like, it is still important. There are people who will be like, "Oh, I can go back to brunch." Even though he lost, I think there will be a mix of good and bad.
I have seen from my sister and other Gen Z kids a kind of weight that only comes from having your entire adolescence and teen years being spent inundated with the climate change crisis, the immigration crisis, the Black Lives Matter, and the Me Too movement. If you think about it, Gen Z really hasn't experienced any kind of peace and quiet, ever.
I would have wanted to have voted. I feel like right now, every vote counts. I know there's people out there who aren't voting. And I don't see why we have to wait till we're 18. You know, I just have to watch other people. Kids are posting about it, my age posting about it. And it's because they can't really do anything else. I posted this one post and it was like, a man can have 20 rape allegations and still be president. But one woman, one congresswoman, can have a leaked nude and she loses everything. She loses her job, she loses her reputation, she loses everything. And I've had people, I thought they were my friends, but look, they were coming into my DMs and saying, like, I'm wrong. And I had this one guy who was like, first of all, it's not different. And he was just like, women are dramatic. And, this is what happens when they get into politics and this and that. And I'm like, boy, first of all, like, go to bed. Like, I'm tired, you know? I'm just not going to put my time and energy into people like that, you know? Alice Brains, I was reading that. I don't really have family members that are like, I voted and talk about it. Our parents were never really into that. And so, whatever family that we do have that is in politics, it's based off of conspiracy theories. And, I'll say something and then they'll be like, that's what's wrong with the generation. You guys are too sensitive. And, and I'm like, no, you guys normalize shit that wasn't okay. And when you hit them with facts, they dodge it. So, yeah, I just have to sit there and bite my tongue and I won't say anything. I'll turn to my cousin and she's like, girl, I know. Yeah. I have these little cousins and I'll be talking to them about why saying certain things ain't okay. And it's what they see from their parents. Homophobia, racism, it's taught to them. I've heard some of the Latino community voting for Trump just because they're homophobic. And you don't want little kids seeing that. And I've had my tío say, they're too young. No, they're not too young. Like they need to understand because, I've had full-on conversations with them. And yeah, they're young, but they need to know that it's okay. And, they're young, so they don't know any better. And they're still like, mommy and daddy said this. And I'm like, no. First of all, you're being a little homophobic right now. And, I've said, like, I don't care if you're 8, I'm going to normalize slapping a kid. No, I'm kidding. But, like, we didn't have that when we were little. First, I saw about COVID, and then I saw about the abolish ICE, and then Trump was like China, and like, people were laughing about it and making memes, and right after that was the Black Lives Matter protests, and I had a moment of like, I don't really think people are realizing what the hell is happening. These people are being targeted. People are being targeted and getting nearly beaten to death. And I think that's when it hit. But this has always been for years. And, it was less of when did it become a reality as when I finally saw it. And people finally saw it. When Trump was first like Mexicans and shit, I was like, oh my God, boy, shut up, And Joe is talking about equality. I saw this post and it was like, what do you think about immigration? And he was saying, you were built off immigration. How are you going to limit immigration? And, he talks about trans rights. And, I think out of the two, I'll definitely go for Biden. Not my obvious first pick, but, you have these two bad things. And one is not as bad, and one is just bad. I felt relieved. I felt happy, I still have that anxiety. I still have that fear. And I'm not sure if it's because whatever the hell happened for the last year, my body is just in shock, girl. Like I'm still kind of recovering. I saw this one post and it was these Trump supporters and they were throwing a funeral for his presidency. And I joined the live on YouTube just to laugh. And people were really giving speeches. And there were literally people on the floor crying. And I'm like, oh my God, girl, get up off the floor. Like, I just feel like it's gotten worse because people are feeling like they have to make a point that he didn't win. I may say that I'm not in politics, but some things I do have to be involved in. And I think this year, people are realizing that their voices have an impact. And at the same time, I don't really feel like anything has changed.
Interviewing Robert really taught me that you're never too young or too inexperienced to just go and take the initiative and fight for what you believe in and take charge for that change that you want to see in this world, and also to inspire others to help join that fight because so many people are also scared.
Hello, my name is Robert Jose Gonzalez, and I'm an 18-year-old political activist in Fontana, California. People say that I'm a radical leftist, but I don't care. I fight for what I believe in. I first got into politics after Donald Trump was elected in 2016. I thought, how could our country let this happen? And a sudden spark lit up inside me, and I realized that a government who cared too much about the rich and not enough for the poor was not a government to support. And I started to think about my parents. They're separated. My mom being a single mom with tons of student loan debt, and my dad being a union worker. I saw that the government wasn't giving my mom enough resources to, do what she can do. Pay the rent, pay the light bills, pay all these other bills on top of her student loan debt. People always say to work smarter, not harder. But some people don't have the ability to work smarter, so they have to work harder for what they want. And I think that's what I inherited from them. Work really hard for what I want. And that's why I vote for left-center progressives. And, other Democrats for office because they support helping single moms. They support helping these families who don't have that income required to be considered middle class. And I know that's very classist of me, but we work our butts off every single day just as much as everybody else wants to make it. Anyways, it was clear to me that Donald Trump should not get another term in office. Originally, I backed Bernie Sanders. He was my presidential choice. Sadly, he dropped out. Not ideal, but not the worst thing that could happen. I voted for Joe Biden. I may not agree with him entirely, but he's a good starting off point. He reflects a lot about what's going on in the communities and, on the ground. 99%. Trump, on the other hand, only cares about getting himself and the 1% richer. I advocate for Biden. I spread information, educated people. I believe there's strength in numbers, and I work to inform and encourage people to take a stand for what they believe in. When he won, I celebrated. But I knew it was just the beginning. I knew there was still so much work to be done, and both parties need to put their greed behind them and put in the work. And never stop to advocate for what's right. And people always think that it's all over once the presidential election is over. But that's not true. There is still so much, and I believe that the best solutions for society come from within, which is why I think it's so important to be involved in local politics. I started this organization called Democrats of Fontana back in 2020, and we work to emphasize transparency. We set bold goals and pursue a clear strategy that seeks to move the needle. We want our voices and the voices of the underdogs heard. A piece of advice I'd give to anyone looking at starting their own political movement is to be passionate about your dreams because they come true. And never hesitate to speak out against positions of power. Oftentimes, politicians forget who they are, where they come from, and who they represent. Sometimes we have to remind them. That's where you come in.
Well, the Electoral College is linked to the 3/5 compromise from the Constitutional Convention. So it gives states with fewer people more power. So like I remember seeing these tweets when it wasn't clear that Biden was going to win. It was like the first night of the election when, it looked like it could go either way, or like the states that weren't called yet, Trump might win them. And I saw these tweets that were like, we live in an entire country full of your dad's friends who made you uncomfortable when you were little. Or like, I love how 10 people from the middle of nowhere get to choose our next president, and like the entire trajectory of where the country goes. And even with like the Senate, how like every state has 2 senators, and that's the more that has more power than the House of Representatives, where it's like proportional to the population. And it really, like, the Republicans don't want the Electoral College to be abolished because, like, they've said that a Republican will never win again. And it's like, if you can only win through a system that's not at all democratic, like, doesn't that give you pause? Doesn't that worry you? But it's like they know that it's not a fair system, but they want to hold on to it because it helps them retain power. And it's true, like George Bush won without the popular vote. And then in 2016, Donald Trump won without the popular vote. So yeah, it's ridiculous that we were holding our breath knowing that Joe Biden would win the popular vote, but not knowing whether or not he would be president because of this system that was constructed by people who owned other human beings and thought that that was okay, and then we keep that. Why?
Yeah, it's a system that's intrinsically capitalist. Obviously, our country is very much in its capitalism, but it makes you think, how different would our democracy be? How different would our country be if those people who were given, 3/5 of personhood back then were actually allowed to participate in what they called democracy? And if the Electoral College didn't exist, where would we be now? And there's so many other models of democracy that happened after the United States established democracy that are better models because they've improved upon what our founding fathers put forth all those hundreds of years ago. But like, we haven't really improved upon our system since then. And it's outdated. That's how I feel about it.
That's the thing. It's like the Electoral College and really all of government, as it is now, wasn't built for people like me. It wasn't built for Black people to have a voice. It was built for Latinos to have a voice. It wasn't built for really anybody but a white man to have a voice. And that's the thing. Like, I remember like in high school taking like AP government, and like, I knew everything about it. I got a 5 on the test. Like, I knew my shit. And then like just being like fed this illusion that the government was this well-crafted machine, all loyal, like all oiled up, how the judicial, executive, and like, all the branches like worked in perfect balance in tandem with each other. Now everything just worked perfectly so that everyone got an equal opportunity. It's just like, like coming into college and realizing like, wow, like this, we are really like resting on this rusted, deteriorating machine, like that designed not even for us, and just really being held captive, like we're being held hostage, really. There's no real reasons to love this constitution, really. There's nothing really to love about it. How it's structured our government, anything. And I don't know what to do. I don't know, because then there's people who say, well, we have to revolt. And like, it's like, yes, but also like, do you know what refugees are? Do you know where they come from? They come from civil war. That it's not this unifying Hunger Games thing. This will this will kill people, and it will kill the poor people first if this was to happen. So it's like, what do we do? What do we do besides voting that can help restore our communities? Uh, Actually give us some sense of democracy, um, it's terrifying, and it's, I just,
Like, how do we fix a fundamentally broken system?
mhm.
How do you even start?
Yeah.
The way I stay involved in politics and voting is by making sure I'm staying updated on everything that is happening, not only within my community and nationwide, but globally as well. I also try to stay involved by having conversations about everything that is currently going on with our government, especially with people who have opposing beliefs for me, because I think it's important to have those challenging conversations to see where change needs to be enforced to ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity for a better life in the United States.
Until the next election, I am going to continue organizing and protesting and donating to mutual aid funds when I'm able to, and just generally making sure that I'm doing what I can to take care of the community around me.
Until the next election, I will be holding Joe Biden accountable for the promises he made before he got elected.
Between now and the next election, I will be attending town halls in my area because civic engagement at a local level directly impacts me and my neighbors.
I vote every day with my money, with my privilege, with my influence. Every single day, I make a choice to become involved in organizations I believe in, to fight for the causes that I believe in. Every day, I vote in different ways. and I will continue to do so for the rest of my life.
So many things are on our plate that we didn't take into consideration. So it actually felt like overwhelming. Like after I was done deciding to vote in the next election, like it was scary for me because there was like cops waiting by the side.